Hi, I'm Randy MacLean from Waypoint Analytics, and I have with me today Steve Epner
Hi,
from
Randy.
the Startup Within. Steve and I have been having some great conversations today, and one of the debates we got into a little bit was about innovation. And I've been thinking a lot about this innovation thing, and I'm a little bit of a skeptic, I have to admit. I think that the whole concept that you can sort of innovate on command, or that an organization can just decide it's going to innovate seems a little bit elusive to me. When I'm thinking about, there was only one Albert Einstein. He was the only guy that came up with the theory of relativity, and the idea that he would come up with more theories regularly throughout his whole lifetime seems impossible. So where am I wrong?
But then there was Edison, who came up with many ideas. I think one of the things you got to look at, innovation only happens when there's a culture that supports innovation. So if you go into a company and says, this is the way we've always done it, this is the way we're always going to do it, you're going to have no innovation.
Right.
Anything that comes up, we call them killer phrases, will be shot down because we've never done it that way, we've always done it that way, John won't allow it, it's not in the budget, IT will shoot it down. Whatever the reasons, they're going to have all these ways to kill any new ideas.
Well, when I'm thinking about innovators or innovation, I'm thinking about those grand ideas, the idea that you could take a buggy and you could put some kind of a steam engine or something in it, and then you wouldn't need a horse anymore.
But let's look at something else. Somebody, sometime, developed the barcode. Great innovation, used it in clothing, used it at Sears, places like that. But somebody else said, how can we use this to help us manage inventory in a warehouse? Mm-hmm. Was that an innovation? It wasn't the barcode, but it was just as important.
The use of the barcode.
It was the use of the barcode.
Okay,
Look at Steve Jobs. Mm-hmm. He didn't invent the iPod. There was an MP3 player for 3 years. He invented an easier way to use it.
Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about innovation, then really you're talking about maybe just doing something differently and better, right, that other people haven't thought of or done yet?
Well, you used a word in our earlier conversation, which I wish we had recorded. You said it's an inspiration. That's what it is. People get inspirations. They come up with ideas. Innovation is the process of taking that idea and creating a concept that you can really do, you can implement, you can build, you can sell.
Well, that's interesting then. So, in the early part of my career, I used to spend a lot of time in the grocery aisles looking at what Procter & Gamble and Lever Brothers and people did in consumer packaged goods. And I remember seeing a little Tide package that had a flap that opened up in the front. And I thought, Eureka, we've been trying so hard to tell our story on the back of the box, and there's only so much space there. How terrific it is to have put a flap on the back or the front that you could open up like a book and triple the real estate so that you could tell the story of your product on there. Now, I think I was the first to ever do that in software, but it wasn't certainly my invention. So was it an innovation to find a new use or a new place to use an idea like that?
Absolutely. Some of the, and some of the things that we talk about in the book, Simplify Everything, yeah. I'm going to put in a plug. Get your team from do to done, but it's free on Randy's website.
Yeah, somewhere around this video, you'll see a link to download it.
But the thing is, so many of the things that we do, remember I told the story about the president who signed every check, and they finally decided that he didn't have to sign checks that were under $500. For that company,
cut out 90% of the checks they had to sign.
Right, yeah. And for that company, that was an innovation, and it paid them back. They made money on that innovation. It didn't reset the world, it didn't change the time, but it changed the way they operated. To me, that's an innovation.
Okay, so if we redefine my expectation of innovation down to using a good idea that people haven't used or thought of before for something that will give you a benefit, being an innovation, then I'm starting to see the light. I'm starting to see what you're meaning. There's probably room for all kinds of innovations.
Absolutely.
If we move the things that we have to pick the most frequently in the warehouse to the racks that are closest to the packing station,
that's an innovation.
That would basically make our operations more efficient. We could pack more things with less people, or more things with the same amount of people, increasing our efficiency.
And if you take that one step further, you put the things that you don't pick very frequently in the back of the warehouse.
Right.
And then you put the lights on a motion detector so they're off most of the day.
Right.
You know, when you got those high energy lights, they use a lot of electricity. That's an innovation. Again, it's not going to set the world on fire. It may not be as innovative as sliced bread, but it's going to be meaningful to the operation of that warehouse.
Well, somebody had once said there are no silver bullets. There's not one thing that you can do and your entire company will be perfect. It's basically the accumulation of a lot of small things that are done better.
Correct. Absolutely right.
Yeah, and we can bear that out because we have spent a year looking into what it is that makes the companies that produce 20+% NBT. They get 20% or more of their revenue all the way to bottom line. And we started saying, how do they do this? What do these companies do? And what we see is very high levels of efficiency. And when you start talking about the things that we've just named as innovations, then I guess what you're really saying is that it's these innovations that actually help them get that effective and that efficient at what they're doing.
I want to be a little careful.
Yeah.
The innovation, as you and I have talked on separate occasions, is the idea, the thought in your head. Mm-hmm. If you don't take action to figure out how to put that into existence in your operation, it's worthless.
Well, that's a good point. And I don't know how many times in my life, walk around, somebody's a multimillionaire, they had something, and somebody will say, I had that idea, I could have been rich. Well, why weren't you? It's because
you didn't take action.
You never took it to the point where it actually was implemented.
Right.
So that's a good point. Now, I can think of a bunch of the roadblocks that prevent things people from taking action and prevent things from being implemented. And I think in the book you had talked about the killer phrases, I think.
Correct. And that's what I call them, because people, matter of fact, when we do brainstorming or for the audience, brainstorming was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Today, if you want to come up with ideas, do painstorming, P-A-I-N.
Oh, yeah?
Because if we do something that will solve our customer's pain, they're willing to pay more money for that.
Yes.
Okay, so we want to do painstorming to come up with ideas, but then we have to implement them. We have to make them work, and that's part of what we're talking about.
Well, I'm really glad that you raised that, because that touches on a very, very important core topic for every company and for distributors in particular. And that is, if you want, the market changes, the world changes, the product changes, the customers change, the people in the customers change, your people change. And if you want to maintain your relevance, if you want to be important to the customers that come, the customers that you already have, you want to keep those customers, you have to be relevant to them through time. And frequently, if you're not changing what you're doing, well, they are changing what they're doing. You're not able to meet that one core item, and that is your company absolutely has its mission statement has to be, we help our customers meet their objectives. And so if they're trying to get their product through the system more effectively, if they're trying to get it delivered to the customer so their customer likes it better, if they are trying to find innovative ways to control the paper flow or to change the timing of the deliveries and whatnot, you have to be innovating to basically maintain your relevance. So when you're talking about these kinds of things, it's how do you make this happen? And Bruce has a great story that he shared with us in the past. He would go out on one of his regular missions, and he'd go to his customers, and the customer he was servicing, the customer group, had a particular need where they really, really, in certain circumstances, had to be able to order a product right now and have it the next morning. And so he started going through the why process. He'd go out and say, how come we can't get this guy's order tomorrow? And the reason why is because we don't accept any orders after 11 a.m. Why don't we accept orders after 11 a.m.? Well, we have the lunch hour, and then we have to make sure we have it in early enough so we can make sure it goes through the system so it can be picked to go in the truck before the truck leaves. Well, what time does the truck leave? Well, the truck goes at 2. Well, can we get the truck to go at 5? No, we can't get the truck to go at 5. That, it's UPS, they won't do it. So he goes and meets with a UPS driver. This is the president of the company. Says, what is it you do at the end of your day? How's your route? Goes, anyway, you can do it later. And he says, no, we got our route and whatnot. He says, well, what do you do before you go back? He says, well, I got this spot that I stay in the top of the hill and I can look over the ocean. It's usually nice weather because I got about a half an hour paperwork I need to do before I get back to the terminal. So I sit there and do that. Said, I have an idea. Why don't I give you your own desk? And you can, it'll be your desk, and you keep your picture of your family on it, and what's your favorite soda? We'll have a fridge there with your soda, and you can come do your paperwork at our place at the end of the day. And even if it's rainy and whatnot, you have a nice place to do it. So the guy says, sure, and he rearranged his route, and then he comes at the end of the day. So he rolls in at 4:30, he's doing paperwork till maybe 5:30, and Bruce's guys are loading out the truck with all the stuff that would be delivered to the customer the next morning. And so you managed to get the 2 p.m. cutoff that was driven by UPS to be a 5 or 5:30 cutoff, which meant that they could put in orders up to 4:30 in the afternoon and still get their stuff, which meant that he could give their customers what they wanted.
So let me take that story another level.
Yes.
Because I've told Bruce a similar story. Because I always go in, and one of my favorite quotes from Mark Twain is, it's not what we don't know that gets us in trouble. It's what we know for sure that just ain't so. So what I did is I had a similar situation. I had a distributor. They were selling to the construction industry. Their rule was order by 2 o'clock for next day delivery. And that's not good because the construction doesn't complete till like 3:30. So now you got the foreman ordering what they think they need an hour and a half before they know what it is.
Right.
So I said, why can't you do this later? And they said, well, because we have to have everything picked, packed, and ready for the UPS 5 o'clock pickup. And I said, have UPS come later. And they said, we can't. And I said, why not? Because that's the rule. So I said, hold on. Let's have a meeting with UPS. And we called UPS in. We said, hey, we want to ship things, but we'd like to go later. So the guy looks at all the things they've ordered, and he says, I'll tell you what, you buy enough stuff. What we can do is if you'll give us a bay, we'll bring an empty truck, we'll drop it off, and we'll leave it here until, say, 8 p.m., and we'll send the tractor over to pick it up after 8 p.m., and we'll drop off another empty. How would that work for you? And they said, my gosh, I thought your last pickup was at 5 o'clock. The guy said, no, that's just what we do for offices. Most people leave at 5 o'clock, and so we tell everybody, we're going to pick up by 5 o'clock so they don't leave before we do the pickup. But for somebody like you, we don't have to have our last truck to the sorting place until 10 p.m. So 8 o'clock is easy.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
So these guys suddenly started taking orders up until 5 for next day delivery.
And so what that does, of course, is that takes us back to your killer phrases. Because they won't stand for this. They will say no. It won't work. We've never done it that way before. You probably have some other great ones.
Oh, well, and this is why I say it takes a culture that encourages innovation. If you're afraid of doing something different, then everybody in your organization, if you're at the top, is going to know that, and they're going to be afraid to innovate.
Yeah, and as a manager and a business owner, and a pretty successful one across 11 businesses, I recognize these killer phrases all the time. And one of the things that I run into always is so-and-so won't do that. They're always saying that somebody else won't let it happen. And what I say to them uniformly is, well, let's let them tell us no. We're not going to say no for them. Because 60% of the time, they don't say no. And the person, in the same sense, that's what we tell them because businesses close at 5, has made some assumptions that just aren't borne out by the facts.
Well, and I tell my students, so these are MBA students, they've all been in business for some number of years, and they come back to get their MBA. And I tell them, if you never ask, the answer is always no. So take a chance. And the worst thing that's going to happen is you'll get a no anyway.
Yeah, the worst thing that'll happen is you'll be right where you started, and you wasted nothing, a question.
Right.
So.
Well, there's one other thing, if I may add to that.
Yes.
Never accept a no from someone who can't say yes. We spend a lot of time asking people who are too low in the organization, who are afraid to make a decision, and for them it's safer to not make a decision than to make the wrong one.
Yeah, and how I wrap that up when I'm communicating with my people is if they don't know, they'll say no.
Right.
And so you always, I like what you phrased better, because what it does is it implies a route to success. We've got to go to somebody that could say yes to this, the real person that is deciding yay or nay, and they can decide yay or nay on the set of facts that is specific to our case.
Absolutely. And then you become an innovation company. You are not innovating on signal. Hey, Randy, today I need an innovation. That doesn't happen. But if you have this kind of culture, Randy's going to be coming up with ideas all the time. Not everyone is going to be worth doing, and that's okay. There's a big difference between can do and should do, and that's part of what executive leadership has to decide. But if you pick the right can-dos that you should do because the ideas are coming in, you're going to be constantly improving your operation.
Yeah, and that's really important because in my experience, about 60–70% of all the times when we have a reasonable idea that makes sense, we'll get a yes if we can get to the right person. We make sure we ask the question and we present them with a set of facts which will demonstrate a win-win. And so I would bet all day long on a 70% success rate, and that may be underestimated. I think my experience maybe is even higher than that. So always make sure that when there's an opportunity to do something better, that you make sure that you take the opportunity to try and do it.
Randy, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. And thank you for spending time with us on this. This innovation thing, I think, is important. And I'd never put that term to it before, but I know that we've had best success when we've found ways of serving the customer better, of helping the customer meet his objectives better. And that's one thing that makes long-term relationships possible and likely, gives you sustainability and safety in what you do as a manager. So Steve, we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
And thank you for spending time with us, and we'll see you in future videos.